All right, hello everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Star Wars Mark of Balance. My name is Mark, and today I'm so excited to talk about Visions Volume 2. As you guys know, I really liked Visions Volume 1. There were some pieces of that I thought were some of the strongest Star Wars we've gotten in a long time, especially with The Village Bride. I totally connected with the subtle themes of Star Wars without it being an inherently Star Wars story until the end. And with Volume 2, we were going to see such a broader range of studios from around the world, including Spain, Ireland, Chile, the United Kingdom, South Korea, France, India, Japan, and South Africa. So not only were we going to see a much wider array of animation styles, but we were also going to see a wider array of interpretations of this story that we know and love in Star Wars. And that's the best part of Visions, and that's why I want them to keep making seasons like this because it distills Star Wars down to its purest form. And you know, whether you liked the shorts or not, that there was so much heart and weight put into these because these parts of the world maybe haven't been represented in Star Wars that much. And these regions and these cultures are able to leave their footprint on this galaxy far, far away. And that purity in storytelling always comes across for me. I always get emotional watching these because it's so amazing to see that this is Star Wars. This is also Star Wars. There's not many other franchises that have this creative freedom. And the fact that I'm watching these and I'm seeing these cultures getting intertwined and being reminded that all these different backgrounds, we all share this same love for Star Wars and its themes. And this group of shorts highlights the themes of Star Wars so, so well. From family to finding yourself to embracing the light and dark within you, and finally, hope. And so while I really liked Visions Volume 1, I think Volume 2 was far more consistent throughout its shorts, and I can't wait to dive into all these. I'm going to go in order. There are some that I absolutely fell in love with. There are others that I enjoyed the experience, and I like how all of them wrapped up, but maybe didn't connect with the story as much. But again, I want to reiterate, whether I liked it or not didn't matter because you can tell that there was so much love and care put into these stories, and these studios, you could feel their excitement to be in this universe, and it just comes across through the storytelling. So I'm going to dive right into the first one called Sith, and this was the perfect one to start out with because I think this animation is some of the best animation I've ever seen. It combined 2D animation with 3D animation with photorealistic animation with hand brushed paintings, and then it also added this flair of translucentness to some of the scenery and the droid especially, and even worked in this outer shell to every character, this imperfection of lines and sketches around them, which was really cool and interesting. And just throughout this entire short, the animation style continued to evolve, and I just absolutely was floored by it. And story wise, I really enjoyed this concept of bringing color and painting into the idea of the Force and the light side and the dark side. It's funny, we always watch Star Wars and we do associate colors with the light and the dark, the oranges, the reds being the dark side, and then the blues and greens being the light side. And we've never really seen this idea of art being pulled into that. I mean, we have Thrawn and we have Sabine talking about art and expression of culture, but putting the Force in this framework was really, really cool. And I love that she was still struggling with holding on to this darkness within her because she was this Sith apprentice, and the apprentice is hiding away, and the master is coming back to recruit her again, that she can't hide from this anymore. And in the end, she finally embraces both sides. I love when she says, in paintings, there's light and dark regions. It's all part of the painting. And when she embraces it, she lights her lightsaber, and it's a yellow and a red lightsaber. It's light and dark, and she's able to destroy her old master because she embraces that part of herself. She embraces all pieces of herself. And that's like a new concept for Star Wars and interpretation, which is what makes Vision so cool. Because in our version, you're supposed to control your dark side. You're supposed to acknowledge it. But in this, she uses them. She embraces them. And I really like the visual representation in the end of the painting that she creates with her holding up her lightsaber with the light and dark side. They're all a part of her. And that she's taking this newfound identity into the universe and she's going to find herself. And I love that theme. And they even pull in a line right from Rebels in Ahsoka, my favorite character, saying, I am no Sith, Just like she said, I am no Jedi, neither embracing either side of the spectrum, but living in the middle. So this short was awesome. This came from Spain, El Guri Studio. That's probably murdered, but they did a fantastic job. And I'm actually very interested to see some of their other work because this was fantastic. Now, the second one, Screecher's Reach from Cartoon Saloon in Ireland. I think thematically and story wise was definitely my favorite one because it was so unique and it was a subversion of our typical story in the Star Wars galaxy. In Star Wars, we always see the longing to explore the galaxy and leave the homeworld as a hopeful and joyful experience for our main character. We're rooting for them. And they kind of drop us in this story with the same type of motivation. We're dropped into this adventure tale between a bunch of kids, and one kid is trying to leave, Dell, our main character, and she wants to go explore the galaxy and leave this world. And the other kids are a bit more content with their life. They're obviously like child laborers, which is a pretty dark introduction, but there's a lightness to the story. And Dell has this medallion she's wearing, and she has this saying that she holds on to with the medallion, and the medallion has a sort of Jedi-esque feel to it. So you're thinking, oh, she's a Force-sensitive child who wants to embrace the Force and go out into the galaxy. But then the story takes a turn. They enter this dark side-esque cave, which ends up being one of the most terrifying pieces of imagery we've had in Star Wars, of this entity that lives in the darkness and screeches and has claws and reaches out to try and take the kids away. And Dell refuses to leave. She stays. She inadvertently embraces the dark side. She has a chance to leave, but she says, no, I have to face this. Again, we're like, okay, Jedi, we've seen a Jedi want to face their darkness before, but in this case, she keeps looking for strength. She always says the word strength, and she ends up defeating this monster who was an actual person. No matter how disheveled and creepy they are, they were a person, and she strikes them down with this red lightsaber. And at this point, we have this haunting score come in where this voice is beautiful, but it is very dark and somber. And you realize the story has taken a very different turn. And then the medallion lights up in red, and it says, you've passed the test. And the ship comes down. It's an all-black ship, and it has the red markings on it. And you start to realize this is a Sith. This is a dark side user that has been tempting Dell. And it completely flips the idea of using hope as a vehicle to leave your planet and wanting to find a better life. It actually frames it that Dell's fear of staying in one place and staying on this planet actually made her vulnerable to outside negative influence. And the story ends on this really dark note where she says, can my friends come? And she said, no, this is only for you. You wanted this. It was a very selfish desire, which is always at the heart of Star Wars, selfless versus selfish. And she still takes it, and she leaves her friends behind. And the final shot of her turning around with regret and tears in her eyes as the thing closes, and then it cuts to black and you hear that voice of the score again. It is powerful in the ending, and like I said, it was so thought-provoking, and I love how they flip this idea of hope into fear, that they can kind of coexist, but it depends how you pursue that, whether it's from a pure place or a selfish one. So I absolutely loved Screecher's Reach. I think it was the most thought-provoking of them. And shout out to Ireland for taking this very dark but realistic take at the Star Wars story and its themes. The next one is called In the Stars by Punk Robot, which is a Chilean animation studio. And they took a more indigenous take on the Empire taking over these worlds and destroying cultures, whether by force or, like we've seen in Andor, through slow phasing out of their traditions and slowly making them more imperial than what they were before. And this was a stop motion animated short, and I really loved the tradition of all the hands being on the rock formation, and that your elders, your ancestors, everyone that has died is becoming a star, and they're always watching you, and they symbolize this, that they've given up hope because the Empire is extracting the resources from the world, they're polluting the world, so there's this ever-present fog over the sky, and you can't see the stars, the elders. The hope is gone, and her sister represents that. But our main character represents the optimism of youth. And she's always like, we can fight them, we can win. And her sister is just surviving. She's not fighting back. She's just, I need to get a little bit of water from the place and I'll come back and we'll just survive. And it's implied that their mother had the force and that she fought back and she died trying to fight back. And that's why her sister is completely cut off from that. And the daughter wants to fight. And we have this infiltration of the Imperial base, and then they both embrace each other. I thought the sequence where they were falling and she was reaching out, and the sister finally accepted the force again and reached out and saved her. And then they both broke the water seal and they were able to rid the world of the Empire and their operation, and the wildlife starts to come back. And it's really a beautiful ending with all the hands popping up on the stone again because the smoke clears away and they're able to live for a brighter future. So I really enjoyed the ending of this and the overall themes. I personally thought the child's voice actor was a bit annoying. I didn't really like her character that much, but I respected what they tried to do with her. And in the end, it worked out, and I liked her in the end. But the journey to get there, I wasn't the biggest fan of the daughter. But again, I really liked this indigenous view of Star Wars. I liked the emphasis on the environment and sustainability and empires coming in, taking resources and destroying the world and the cultures around them. So I liked those takes, and it's very realistic to Chile and that part of the world, and that's why Visions is great. So moving on to the fourth one, I Am Your Mother from Aardman Studios, which I think a lot of people were looking forward to this one because they are a very, very famous, very unique stop motion animation studio with movies like Chicken Run, and a lot of people were just excited to see Star Wars and their blend of comedy all come together in a stop motion world. And I enjoyed this one. I think the message was great, and I think the humor landed, even though I'm not that big of a fan of this stop motion style that they have. It's not my favorite, and I'm not particularly a fan of the movies that the studio has done before, but I do think it was very light. It was very fun, and I think it told a really good story in the Star Wars world. I think Wedge Antilles was hilarious as this type of celebrity. Like, he embraces being the hero of the rebellion, and he takes pictures and he has merchandise and all that. I think that was a great fold into this story. And yeah, the idea of piloting in Star Wars is such a big piece of the storytelling, from Hera to Anakin. Like, all of these characters are so intertwined with piloting, so you really should have a story set around piloting in these Visions shorts. So this was great to see that, and it being a family affair, you know, the mother wanting to pass down to her daughter, but her daughter is embarrassed, and then they finally embrace each other. So I don't have much to say about this one. This was just a fun short. It was exactly what it needed to be, and exactly probably what people expected it to be. So yeah, this one was a good time. The next one was one of the ones that I was most excited for, Journey to the Dark Head. This was animated by Studio Mir, who is the animators behind Legend of Korra, the Avatar story. I might be the only one that really enjoyed The Legend of Korra. I get it had issues, and of course it was never going to live up to Avatar The Last Airbender, but I did enjoy that animation style. I liked how they took risks with the Avatar universe. I'm not saying they all landed, but I was looking forward to this one, and the animation here was absolutely beautiful. It's more in that anime style, so I was drawn to it. But I think here the budget and the care that was put into some of these shots was fantastic. I don't know if they're going to be animating any of the Avatar movies and TV shows that are coming up, but I hope they're involved in some degree because their animation quality has gone up so much based on this short. And if they're going to get movie level budgets, I really think they could do something great in that universe. So this is all to say that I was looking forward to this one. I loved the animation. The story was more of the embracing both sides. You can't destroy the darkness. You just have to live alongside of it, either embrace it or acknowledge it. And I think the main characters are really cool. We have this girl who's kind of a monk type character. She goes to the Jedi Order and says, we need to destroy the Dark Head, and that will destroy all the darkness in the galaxy. Of course, it isn't that simple. And she gets paired up with a Padawan who has a darker past. He was involved in a fight with a Sith Lord who came onto the planet and killed his master in a really dark way. He used like a tail spear and like speared her, and I think I saw like a blood splatter. That was pretty dark for Star Wars, but I really didn't like the voice actor choice that they made for this character. He was supposed to be young, kind of teenage years, but he sounded way older, and some of his lines were really clunky. Like later on, he says like "Fight me, shut up," and then he jumps at him, and it just didn't line up with the pace of the fight, and it kind of took me out of it a little bit. But I did enjoy the chemistry between the pilot and the Padawan here, and I think by the end they have this really good rapport. And the action here is incredible. Like I said, the animation was top tier. The final shot of the fight when it zooms out and it's just the two mountains and the sun setting over them, it's just fantastic. And again, you gotta like the theme of embracing the dark side and the light side. You can't destroy the dark side. So this, I don't want to say it was a underwhelming short for me, but I did expect more out of this studio. But from an animation perspective, I really enjoyed it, and I think by the end the characters work. But I think the voice actor choice for the Padawan wasn't the best. I'm just realizing now that some of these were voice acted by the native language speakers, and they were probably the original versions. And I just watched English for all of them because that was the default. And I think for Visions Volume 1, the default was the Japanese audio. So, like, it totally makes sense why I didn't like the voice actor because it was dubbed. I watched the dub version of Journey to the Dark Head. Damn it. I tried to watch it on Roku. I tried to find the subtitle thing. I tried to find the language thing. It didn't come up on the TV. All right, well, get rid of all my criticisms. This was a 10 out of 10 if I could actually hear the original audio. I guess I'll watch this one back in Korean the way it was supposed to be because I was like, these voices don't line up to the mouth movements. I'm such an idiot. Such an amateur move. Okay, and the next one was definitely my favorite from a plot perspective. I think The Spy Dancer by Studio La Chaussette? La Chasse? I don't know. But it's a French studio, and this one was fantastic. First of all, you already had me hooked because this was based on historical events where French dancers were used as spies against the Nazis during the occupation of France. And so, like, right there, you already have me hooked because you're using historical events, and that adds, like, a validity to the story. And then this animation style, while I was like, the stormtroopers look kind of weird, but I think in the end it works out so well. And the actual animation of the flowing dance of the main character is really just show stopping. And she plants all of these voice recorders and trackers on all the stormtroopers. And then she notices there's an officer in the box seating, and she sees him, and she has this flashback. And we get this really horrific flashback where we see that her child was taken away from her, and her village was destroyed by the Empire, which obviously put her on this path to be a part of the rebellion network. And she mistakes this officer for the same one that took her baby, and she gets a spear, kind of like Ezio in Assassin's Creed. She gets the spear on her arm, and she's going to go up there and essentially kill him. This was going to be like her last performance. She was just going to go out. She had been haunted by this ghost for so long, and this was the only way she thought she would be free. And in her pursuit of freedom through revenge, she notices that this officer isn't the same one. And then there's a fight, and you can see that she's holding back, and then it's finally revealed in the end that this is her son, that the Empire took her son and indoctrinated him into the Empire, and he's now worked his way up to an officer. And she realizes that, and there's this absolutely incredible scene which made me very, very emotional, where she embraces him as the sun's coming up, and she's like, I finally found you after all these years. And she gives him the necklace that she wore at the time, and she's like, come find me when you're ready. And she escapes, and then we have this just great scene of him standing on the deck of a Star Destroyer, and you know that he has the eye patch on, so you recognize that the main character had two different color eyes, the blue and the yellow, and you saw that in this case, the son has the blue eye, and then he covers the yellow eye, blonde hair, blue eye, very Nazi-ish. Another feed into the historical accuracy of this. And then he takes off his hat, and you realize his horns were shaved off, which is so, so brutal, but so reminiscent of how the Empire is run. They do not embrace aliens in their order like they didn't with Thrawn in the book series. He is an outsider to them, and they have to conform him to the look of a human. And the fact that they shave down his horns, and it's just so brutal how he has to hide his identity. And you see it zooms in on the locket that she gave him, and it has a tracker on it. And that's how it ends, with the tracker beeping on a black screen. And I was absolutely floored by this whole short. I think the story was so unique, so incredible, and I want to see more of it, but this is perfect. Like, this was just absolutely perfect from a story lens, and the fact that you can fit a twist in a short like this with such heavy plot is so impressive within 20 minutes. So if you watch one volume 2 short, it would have to be The Spy Dancer. This was definitely my favorite. For the next one, we have The Bandits of Golak, which is from 88 Pictures, which is an Indian animation studio. This was very heavily influenced by Indian culture, which was really cool to see Star Wars kind of transplanted into the Indian aesthetic. And I really enjoyed the animation here. It was very Clone Wars-esque, but a little bit more photorealistic. And I love the stylization of this one, of the character designs, and the relationship between the brother and the sister was established very early on with their little handshake, that they've kind of been surviving on their own out here, that they don't have parents and that they're the bandits. And they're heading to this remote village, and an Inquisitor shows up. And I love the design of the Inquisitor in this one. They have these gold accents on the Inquisitor robes, and he has this hood on, and he has this blue skin and this mustache. He's just so evil looking, and I absolutely love the fight between the older lady at the refugee camp, and she is a Jedi in hiding, and she has this staff that turns into two blades, and the fight and the slow motion is really well choreographed. And then in the end, she cuts his throat, and he like squeaks out, "I can't believe there's a Jedi in Golak," or something, which not only like lines up with the Empire's values that these small villages can't amount to much, but there's a Jedi here that has defeated him, and that he was defeated by this lowly Jedi from a refugee village. And I just really enjoyed the fight here. And then the end is essentially revealed that the brother knew what they were going into. He knew she had special powers, that she had the Force, and that he brought her there for a better life and to embrace this part of herself. And there's a really nice moment between them where they do the handshake again, and then they say goodbye. And I enjoyed this one overall. It was a fun adventure, and again, I really like the heart that they brought into this one by weaving in the Indian culture into the short. The next one is called The Pit, from DR Shitagio and Lucasfilm, which is a Japanese studio, and I guess they worked in collaboration with Lucasfilm. And this one was about a group of essentially slaves that were sent out into the middle of the desert to find kyber mines. And when they found some, they told them to just keep digging, and eventually this huge pit is formed, hundreds of feet down, where no light can really reach. And once they're done, once they get to bedrock, the Empire just says, "Okay, we got all the resources, see you later." And they turn off the lights, and all of the ships leave, and they have no way of getting out of this pit. It's really, really brutal. And this nearby city has essentially popped up because of the wealth that the kyber mine had granted them. And all of the civilians are blissfully unaware of how all these riches came about, and that there are these slaves that are at the bottom of a pit right outside the borders of their town. And that's really telling, and a really worldly theme that we can see in our life today, the duality between the riches and the upper class of society, and the people that suffer to give them that type of lifestyle, and how they just get discarded at the end of the day. So then we get like a very Dark Knight Rises type of thing, where this kid tells his sister to look for the light always, and he starts to climb out, and when he gets out, he gets to the city. He starts to tell people. The people don't really believe him. They're like, "Well, I don't see anything." It's one of those things where it's like, well, if I don't see it, it's not happening. It's not in my backyard. I don't really know about it. And the Empire take him, and they throw him into the pit, and he dies, which is like, damn, that is brutal. And so all of these people watch him die, and his sister sitting there, and his sister's like, "We have to tell people. We have to use our power to get out of here." And they all start chanting, "Look for the light, look for the light." Very One Way Out-ish from Andor. And the citizens hear, and they come out, and they see the people, and they rescue them. And we see that the daughter embraces this, and she takes a kyber crystal, and it speaks to her and implies that she has the Force, and that she will maybe become a Jedi one day, which is really cool. But I really liked this storyline. It was really grounded in reality, but also having that Star Wars touch to it with hope and family. And in the end, I just really enjoyed it. I think it, took a risk, took a very dark turn in the middle. But I think in the end, it was definitely one of the stronger ones for me. And the final one we have is Au's Song from Studio Triggerfish in South Africa. I really enjoyed this animation style. It was stop motion, but it wasn't using smooth caricatures. It was these kind of almost stuffed animal looking caricatures that I thought were really cool. And the music in this one was fantastic. The main character has this beautiful singing voice, and it essentially calls to the kyber crystals, and they call back. And I think this was a really good like representation of things that we've seen in Star Wars before, like in the Clone Wars and throughout. We see that the kyber crystals essentially sing to the Padawans that are looking for them when they're sent to Ilum. And I just really like that this South African studio, like they saw that, and that's what they based their whole story around. Like that really spoke to them. So this was cool how there were people that mine these corrupted kyber crystals that are all red, and they give them to the Jedi, and the Jedi cleanse them, and they turn back into, base kyber crystals. And I do like that they had a very like Star Warsy opening to this. They had the opening crawl kind of, and then they have the pan down to the world. That was cool, like homage to the original trilogy. But yeah, the animation was really cool. It was a sweet story. The Jedi sees her cleanse all of the stones with her voice, and the moments where she starts singing and the background kind of drops, and they have this very stylistic animation around the stop motion animation was really cool. And then in the end, we get the heartfelt goodbye, but she's going out into the galaxy, not like Screecher's Reach, not in a negative, fearful way, but a very hopeful way. She wanted to see the galaxy, and though she was reluctant and she didn't want to leave her family, her dad gives her reassurance like no one's ever left, but I'm proud of you and I know you'll do great. And she goes with the Jedi, and they'll go cleanse the kyber in the galaxy, which is really cool. And I just enjoyed this one overall. Wasn't one of my favorites, but I just like the heart of the story, and the animation style was really cool. The music was great, so you got me hooked there. And I think this is a great end to a very, very strong group of shorts. As you could tell, I enjoyed pretty much all of them, and the ones that didn't exactly speak to me like others did, I still enjoyed. I could still feel the heart and the love put into them, and I just think consistently this one was much more enjoyable than Volume 1, no matter how much I liked Volume 1 and how much I still appreciate stories like The Ninth Jedi and The Village Bride. I just think Volume 2 gave more variety. It really, really honed in on the themes of Star Wars very well, like hope, family, finding yourself, embracing the light and dark side, acknowledging your dark side. And it subverted some expectations like Screecher's Reach. It told that typical Star Wars story, but it flipped it on its head. And then with Spy Dancer, it was very realistic, very grounded in history, kind of like Andor. And then we have the indigenous view of things from In the Stars. And we also have a very light, fun comedy, the adventure feel of original Star Wars with I Am Your Mother. And there's so many great examples. I think this was just a great group of Star Wars. It was so great that it came out on Star Wars Day this year on May the 4th, because I think it just melded so well that this is an international property, that these stories are loved and appreciated by so many different regions of this world. And then I'm glad that it's able to be reciprocated, that they can tell their stories with their mindset and their perspective. And I think this is a great culmination of Star Wars on an international level. So I want so many more seasons of Visions. I want them to keep expanding, keep giving smaller studios, bigger studios, any studios around the world the freedom to animate Star Wars stories. And you guys know I appreciate animation as a medium so much. It's probably my favorite medium, so the more the merrier with this. So as always, thank you guys so much for listening. Really appreciate it. Follow me on Instagram at @star_wars_mark of balance. Hear updates on all of my latest episodes. If you're enjoying the podcast, please leave a review on Spotify or Apple or whatever platform you're listening on. That really helps to spread the podcast to new listeners. So really appreciate it. As always, stay safe, stay healthy, and may the Force be with you. Peace.